doing to him?
It's imitating his cells.
Nope. No opening monologue for this episode of Beyond Our World because we need to talk about this film, dive right in, and we're going to get away from the warmth, go to Antarctica for these two films. Ironically, they were both in 1982. If you look at the 2011, it does say 1982 in that one as well. Did you notice that one?
I did not.
But the fact that they kind of take place at the same time, if you watch these films, hopefully you've watched, the original John Carpenter's thing. And if you haven't watched the prequel, the way the original starts is the way the prequel ends. But let's talk about these two films. But we are going to be talking about the Granddaddy first. The one that, made us wonder what would actually happen if an alien would come and start imitating us. I mean, we had Body Snatchers, Invasion of Body Snatchers, but this film took place a couple years after Alien, and John Carpenter did not want to make this film because he thought it was going to bomb because of what Ridley Scott did in the Alien film. And this film was trashed by the critics.
I can't believe it.
Fuck all you critics now, because what do you think of this film now? Because this film is one of science fiction horror classic films. So, Radar, are you ready to talk about The Thing?
Brother, I'm always ready to talk about John Carpenter films. Always.
Listen, I love John Carpenter films. If you don't know my top 10, John Carpenter lives in my top 10. There's a lot of films he's done that I love. There's films that I wish I could have put in the top 10, but I can't. But this film was one of the films that I was watching as a kid I enjoyed. But before I give you my take on it, Radar, what are your memories about watching this John Carpenter classic?
I think the first time I watched it, I was about 10. And it just it happened to come on some cable channel. And I was watching it in this when it got to the part with the kennel, and that first happened, my 10-year-old prepubescent mind was absolutely blown away, absolutely out of the water. And I was like, I need more like this. And you really, because it's its own thing, really, those practical effects, what happens, you can't really get anything else quite like it. So, man, I went back to that film so much. I would say at least 100 times between when I was 10 and when I got into high school. I watched that movie. So just an absurd amount. I could quote the whole film for just chunks of it. And I happened to end up with a group of friends who also absolutely loved The Thing. So we kept continuously watching this film at least 10 times a year throughout my whole entire high school and into college. So, I mean, I have seen John Carpenter's The Thing way too many times. It should be illegal, but I want to ask you, what was the first time you saw this movie?
Not 1982. I mean, I think I saw it a couple years afterwards, and I didn't realize this is when I was going through a whole John Carpenter thing, because I love Halloween. It's my favorite all-time film, and I remember watching The Fog, and then I think I watched this one a little bit after The Fog.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
And all I thought of, because I was not really big into science fiction type horror at the time, because we were watching the killers, we're watching the Jasons, the Michael Myers, the Leatherfaces, where this was possibly one of my first, actually my second science fiction horror type movie, because I watched the original Alien when it came out. But for me, it's just one of these films that if it's on regular TV, I'm watching it.
Oh yeah.
You know, if it comes up on my feed as far as, when I'm, trying to look for something to watch, I'm watching. But I just remember when I first watched this film, and that kennel scene was one of the most memorable scenes because I felt bad for those dogs.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I felt so horrible for those dogs. And then for me, it was the practical effects that, did take hold of this film. Just, this is like pre CGI. So you're watching stuff that there was no CGI in those times. And this is why I think a lot of people like 80s films, because they're all practical effects. There's no CGI. And the fact that is the way this alien thing looked, even when it was on the table and they're
Right.
looking at it. I mean, it just looks so freaking menacing, and all this different forms it would take. But yeah, I mean, I remember watching this as a kid, and I remember that scene where I forgot the name of the actor where he's running outside, they're chasing him, and he's just
Mhm.
on his knees and lets out
Oh,
that creepy fucking scream that
I love
you think.
that fucking.
And that's another thing too. This is once again a John Carpenter thing where sound. I mean, everybody knows Halloween for its score. This film is the sound of that fucking alien and all those little sounds it makes, even when that scene with the kennel. It's like almost like a little like.
Yeah, just that.
I
Oh
mean,
man.
the sounds of this film are freaking amazing, and I think that's one of the things I like so much of this film because there's, I mean, who doesn't like Kurt Russell? I mean, come on.
Right.
I mean, this dude's in Antarctica with fucking shades. And he was like the coolest person, with shades on, and his fucking name was McReady.
Right.
McReady.
And you
So,
have like, it's so iconic too, to the point where you have like websites that are selling replicas of his sombrero he wore for like less than a minute in the film.
this film, I tell you, it's one to this day I still enjoy. I rewatched it, you know, for when we're going to talk about it, and it's still such a fucking captivating film. I mean, one of the things is I took it in a comedic perspective was that in the opening sequence, I was like, man, this dude can't shoot a fucking dog for anything. He ain't
Right.
go. I'm like, how? And he got his head blown away and shit basically because he couldn't kill the fucking dog. And but for me, it's like there's a lot of things in this film when you go back to start watching that you start looking at a different way. So like, once the alien is starts infiltrating, this whole
Mhm.
thing becomes about isolation and trust. And this is what builds this movie very well is these two things. Now, granted, yes, you have the alien, but like, what how do you when you look back at it, what do you think of how the film portrayed this building on, the isolation and the lack of trust?
Right. I think it's like as a kid watching it, you don't, as a dumbass 10, 11-year old, to teen, you're just going, whoa, special effects.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, that's fair because they're incredible. And that's really all your mind is really comprehending. But it hits at a different level when you become an adult because those elements of like the trust breaking down so easily and people completely turning on each other and like really just screwing each other over, really, like survival wise. Because if they had stuck together, they probably would have been able to kill the thing. But to have that distrust sowed and it fall apart so quickly as an adult, you see that in the world all the time, and it's done so damn well. And that's why people have dissected that to death with all their different meanings of like, oh, it's an allegory for the Cold War, or it's this and that. What do you think about like which do you think is more important, I guess, to the element of the thing? Is it the isolation part, or is it the distrust that goes on between the men?
That's a good one. I feel like, wow, that's actually a good one. You flipped that one on me pretty good.
Got him.
I mean, I would say the trust, but I think the isolation. And there's one scene in particular that I just love so much. And
Mhm.
this is when Blair was put into that shack by himself.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Blair is one of the unsung characters in this fucking movie because they drug him up and they put him over there and
Yeah.
they lock him up in there. I mean, he has food and stuff, and he's he's fine and he's away from everything that's going on. But at the same time, every time McGrady went to go see him, he goes, "Oh, it's not this person. It's this person. Oh, it's not
Right.
this person. This person." But he was like, "Listen, I want to go back now. I'm feeling a lot better. I want to go back now." And there's a freaking noose.
That noose.
That scene for me was so telling. The fact that because he was isolated away from everybody, that noose is just hanging there. But then, later on you find out that fucking Blair was as a own little project he was doing while he was, isolated from everybody. But
Right.
for me, yeah, I mean the trust thing does play out well in the film, but the isolation as well, and the fact that, at the beginning of the film, they can't get in contact with anybody. You have
Mhm.
a storm coming in. They're worried about the storm. All of a sudden, this thing is infiltrating them, and they still can't contact anybody to the point where they're like, all right, we're by ourselves. And then you have at the end of the film, Childs and McGrady were like, well, you know what are we gonna do? We're just gonna sit here. Even till then, at that point, I mean, yes, it's the distrust between them, but the fact that they were so isolated from the world that there was like, all right, there's no hope for us anyways.
Right.
So this
This
is
is
just lay here and just relax. And yeah, I mean, I think this film does that so good, and I think this is, one of the things that I'm sure it's talked about a lot, but should be talked about more.
yeah,
How they
that
build that up.
that isolation and it feels like there is no escape too, especially I think the scene for me that really points that out is when I'm blanking on the character's name, but McCready is like, "You guys go back in. Me and him are going to go to my cabin." And he's like, "Why?" "Because when I left yesterday, I turned the lights off, and the lights are on." But it like just that shot, it seems like a Herculean task just to get there, and it's
Yeah.
probably only 200 feet away from him. But it feels that isolation, that crushing element of the weather just feels so foreboding and just overbearing. And you don't get that with much films.
No, and the thing too is the fact that it just takes place in Antarctica. And for us, when we hear the name Antarctica, the first thing you think about is who the fuck is in Antarctica? There's
Right.
nobody over there. But you have all these, if you actually look on Google Maps, you actually do see all these different bases all over Antarctica, research facilities. But for me, I mean, I do like the fact that they chose something as isolated as that, as Antarctica. And you mentioned earlier about, how you were fascinated by the practical effects in this film.
Yeah.
And for me, do you feel like the practical effects used in this film, do you feel like they were ahead of their time?
Ooh, ahead of their time. I mean, the fact they still hold up today, I gotta say, yeah. Because and I mean, I wasn't alive, obviously, at this time period, but oh man, to be a fly on the wall unfortunately, because it did have a bad box office, but to be a fly on the wall and see the audience reactions to when those effects were going on, I'm sure the real horror heads were just blown away by it. And it's done so well. And it seems like something like was pulled directly out of John Carpenter's mind and just thrown into the real world. That's how good the practical effects are done. And there's so many different scenes that you could point to, with all those, but I want to ask what would you say, do you think what scene do the practical effects shine the most in?
I'm sorry, a head getting spider legs.
Yeah, that's
That
fair.
scene to this day, that scene still gets me. The fact that it pulls the head off, gets the spider legs, starts walking around, they turn around. He goes, "Are you fucking kidding me?" I mean, there's that scene. there's a scene where they're about to use the defibrillator.
Yeah.
But the hand fucking jaw opens up, and I mean it's so every practical effect in this movie is just done so well, and then done with so much detail.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you mentioned the kennel scene. I mean, what did you think about the whole detail and the practical effects just to make that scene?
I mean, it probably took them forever, and it looks glorious with what it came out with. And I mean, I think a scene that also, like, the practical effect works don't get enough praise for being in is the dissection scene of that thing. Because it looks so nasty but realistic. Like all the organs they're taking out, they have that, like, yeah, this is an organ kind of look and sheen and feel to them. And just like that weird plastic coating that they have to cut through, the way that it looks so good. And also, shout out to Blair for poking it with his fucking pencil and then just sticking it on his face. It's like, well, I think we know how you got infected, bud.
Blair was fucking cool. I mean, that Blair character was fucking cool, man. I wanted so much more of him. That's like I'm watching the film, like, damn, come on, give me more Blair, man, because Blair was such a cool character, man. To fucking do is spilling a spaceship in this. Because he's smart. He took parts of the helicopter. I'm like, how the fuck does this guy get in parts of the helicopter?
What do you know?
Yeah, where's he coming out of? And eventually we find out that he had many ways to escape. But yeah, for me, I mean, this film, I still watch it, and yeah, I am amazed by the practical effects of this film. And it's one of those things where I wish I knew what their budget was as far as these special effects, because
Right.
the fact that whatever the budget was and what they produced still looks a lot better than a lot of the crap that we get now.
Oh yeah, hands
That
down.
that's so based on CGI, which we'll talk about that in a few. But spoiler. But for me, is like yeah, this film is, and I appreciate it more and more every time I watch it. And I know that's kind of cheesy to say, but it's just when you watch a film like this, it's just there's so many different things that a lot of people don't talk about the cast. I mean, yes, we have Kurt Russell, yes, we have Keith David, but the rest of this cast was so good. I mean, Blair, but it was good. And once again, like their portrayal of each of these characters are really, you have to do that with that the hippie,
Right.
smoking the weed and shit, and I like that scene too. Is like I'm curious how they pulled it off with the blood, where he burns the blood and things. I mean, whoever, I apologize for not knowing who the person was in charge for the practical effects, but yeah, I'll definitely put their name below so everybody could pay homage to this person.
I think it's Bottin.
Bottin.
I think I can't remember I'm drawing a blank on their first name, but yeah. I mean,
I'll definitely put their name on below here so everybody could pay homage to this person. But yeah, I mean, I think this film just has so many good elements that makes you wonder if they should have did a sequel or a prequel. Before I say that, let me just say I am not a big fan of a lot of sequels, because sequels tend to ruin movies. So do some prequels.
Yes.
But being that we're going to shift into this one, did you actually like the 2011 prequel?
So I have this interesting dynamic relationship with this one because, as I said, I absolutely adored the thing. My friends did. And in high school, the 2011 The Thing came out. So I got to actually go and see it in theaters. And like, I absolutely loved it at the time. I absolutely fell in love with it. Again, I was a dumb teenager and I only cared about, creepy creatures on the screen. Couple of years went by, 2 or 3 years. And then I was like in college and went, you know what? This film sucks. It sucks balls. And so I just hated it. And I thought, it just spit on the legacy of The Thing. Then a couple more years go by and I'm like, you know what? They got a lot of things right. I'm going to say I love it again. And finally, I think I've settled on it is fine. it is what it is, you know. And I think that's really where I end up on this film every time I like think about it. You know, there's unfortunate things that happen during the production, and that we can talk about, and things like that, and decisions they made that it's like, well, in hindsight, you wouldn't do it. But, you know, hindsight is 2020. You don't have that all the time. And I think it just comes out to a semi-flawed, but like, I think they had the as best of intentions as you could. What about you, though?
I'm almost the same boat. The first time I heard it, I was like, "Oh, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Don't do this." So when I went in, I kind of went in pissed off because like, why are you making this film?
Right.
So the second time I watched it, and because I'll be honest, I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who plays Kate Floyd.
Right.
I mean Kate Lloyd. She she's just a great actress, and I think when she's picked for roles, I'm kind of captivated by the roles she played. She was actually in 10 Cloverfield Lane, which is a great fucking film.
She's great in that too.
But for me, yeah, I mean, I was hesitating on liking it, and then when I watched it for a second time, I was like, all right, you know, it's not bad. Then when I watched it the third time, I was like, all right, you know what? There has some elements in this film that actually I'm enjoying. I like that they did,
Right.
you know. And then I think you're left when you're watching it for like any time more after that. I actually watched it like the day before yesterday again, just you know to get some you know like a recap on it. But it it did its part as far as setting up, you know, the thing. It gave you some of the questions you had. It took the trust in a different direction over Norwegian trusting American researchers, which is,
Right.
you know, I kind of liked that a little bit. Um, and I didn't mind some of the characters. You know, some of the characters did remind me of the 1982 film. You know, which is
Right.
like, all right, you know, there's too many similarities here. Why are you trying to have characters that remind you of the 1982 film, which you should kind of strayed away from that a little bit, which is one of my knocks I have on this film. You know, because you know, not for nothing, Carter remind you of McCready.
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
think that's a big knock. I mean, the man said, "Come on, dude, don't do this, man. Don't have another cool American. You know, who, hey, look at me. I'm the guy who fights the world. You know." But for me, it's like you know, I didn't mind it, and I think if they would have picked a different lead actress for it, I think it would have fell apart because
Mhm.
I did enjoy her character in the film. And here you have that they had what two women in this whole base, and Carter made that joke. You don't want to be, you know, caught in a storm with a bunch of Norwegians. And I'm like, oh god, this just makes it sound very creepy. But
Right.
you know, you did have her character. I liked her character, you know, in this film. One of the things that I think we're gonna probably take some time to talk on is their choice of actually using CGI in a lot of these scenes. There's only one scene I didn't mind the CGI use, and
Mhm.
it was when it came out of the basically the this frozen encasement and it just shot through
Yeah.
the roof. I didn't mind that at all, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't think they could have done that scene with practical
No,
anyways. So that's, yeah, I agree
and
with you there
and
for
it
sure.
happened so fast that you didn't even get a chance to look at it. All you seen was it going, you know, straight up. But I mean, what did you think of the usage of CGI in this film? You think it hurt the film?
I mean 100%, you know, and cuz obviously the fans of the thing, and as we've talked about, love those practical effects, and they stand up so well. And like, unfortunately, when you're watching the 2011 one, that CGI doesn't hold up so hot anymore. It just it's moving out of that uncanny valley, and it's just degrading more and more. I'm sure in another 5 or 10 years it'll be the equivalent of like when I was growing up and people brought up the Scorpion King and the Mummy Returns.
Oh god, that was
You
terrible.
know,
It was
just
fucking terrible.
horrendous CGI. And I'm sure it'll have aged that poorly, you know, which is just a bummer.
Yeah.
Because I think, and this is, I remember watching like a behind the scenes kind of featurette somewhere of them making it, and the scene where they have like one of the guy's arms come off and go like into that little tentacle claw thing and whip around. They had made a practical device that could do it, and they had like a control operating for it and everything. They had it, and the studio came in and said, "No, just use CGI." And it's like, but they already made it, and that's just really, it's so sad too, because I feel like the directors, they went into it and were like, we're going to try our damnedest to make practical effects.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe, and yeah, use some CGI here and there sparingly. But I think the studio came in and said, nah, you got to get with the times. And that's just a bummer. What about you? Do you think if they would have done maybe 50-50, it would have turned out a hell of a lot better? Or
50-50, I think it would have been a lot better. I mean, there's one scene which I didn't mind the CGI until they went up close on it, was when Kay's in the lab with the other female.
Oh
She's
yeah,
like, oh, there's the things there. And I like, I always like those over the shoulder shots where you see the transformation happening in the background.
right.
Which that didn't look bad.
That didn't look bad.
When they did the up close, I'm like,
yeah.
And then when they did this scene where she's running down the hallway, all the tentacles coming out, I'm like, no. Because
Right.
how are you gonna do that? In the original, you had the scene where the dude bit the other dude's head, he's shaking him around, shaking him around. But you can't do the same thing in this one. It's just like that scene I disliked. I think the worst CGI scene was when their Carter is taking they're leaving, the Americans are leaving basically, and they're taking that one guy because he's all banged up.
Right. Yeah.
And the guy sitting across from him, just his face starts playing. That looks so bad.
That looks really bad.
I'm sitting there like, holy fuck, I didn't remember that. I'm saying like this is just terrible. And it's just like, yeah, I think if they would have did 50-50, I think if they would have had practical effects on all the up close scenes,
Yeah.
like I didn't mind the other CGI scene. I didn't mind was when after the thing escapes and it's underneath the building,
Right.
and then you see like where like these almost like claws.
Yeah, like little pincer thingies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't mind that at all because you didn't see it. You just saw the little bits of it. And then when they had it on the slab, it actually looked pretty cool. Having insect like features, because you're like, all right, so it imitated some insect like creature. Was that the
Right.
creature that was the person, the main aliens that were on the freaking spaceship? Because obviously, and that's one thing that the films didn't dive into at all, which, yes, it's ambiguity, but the fact that it was a distress signal that was being sent out, and they never really said, oh, that could have been a warning. I
Right.
mean, granted, they're trying to survive and stuff, but that was never mentioned. But yeah, I feel like if they would have did the 50-50 practical effects and all the close up scenes, like I didn't know that with the hand. I mean, if you had, come on, use the practical effect.
Use a practice.
The
It's
CGI looks so shitty when they
yeah.
showed that.
And it looked like, and I mean, when when the behind the featurette, when they had the puppeteer operating it, and there was no like cleanup or anything, obviously. It's just two dudes in a studio going and playing around with it. It already looked better than the CGI.
Yeah, the choice. I mean, it's unfortunate because I do think that the film had a lot of good elements. That
Yeah.
it wasn't a bad prequel. It wasn't a bad prequel.
No, I wouldn't say bad. Like, truly, I think this is unfortunate because it's one of those perfect examples of a film where, like, on its own, people would be totally fine with it. It would be a solid, decent film.
Yeah.
But because it's lumped in with the thing, it is so close to something that is a masterpiece, people are automatically just do not like it.
Which is crazy because the original was killed by the critics.
Right.
Prequel, I don't think the only thing in Garner was hate on the CGI. I don't think it did bad in the theaters.
Yeah, I think it did all right at the box office.
I mean,
Yeah.
it got its money back, but for me, it's just like, and this is the problem where a lot of big companies, I don't know why they do this, is the wait for prequel or sequel This one was what, the 82, 2011?
Yeah, like 30 years
Almost 30
almost.
years. Yeah. Like, what the? I mean, but like, so overall, let's put these two together now. So, I mean, overall, what do you think of the two films as far as technically it's a franchise now?
Hmm.
And would you even continue? Now, you can't do another prequel. You can't.
You can't do it.
But would you be open for a sequel?
So I'm going to tread with caution. I think I would be up for a sequel, but it like would be in a completely different area. It wouldn't even mention Outpost 31 in any way, shape, or form. I think it would be a continuation of the story where somehow the thing made it out of Antarctica and into like because I mean, honestly, Antarctica to what is it? Argentina, I think. Is that the closest South American
Yes.
country? Yeah, I mean, it's not that far. So I would feel like having a continuation of that where it's like now it's in a warm climate and it can start to kind of spread, but it's like still an isolated part, like in the jungles or something. I think that would be a great sequel, but it just can't have anything to do with the thing. I think that would be pretty cool.
I'm gonna go a different way. I don't know if
Okay, let's hear what you got.
I would say if it's not done by American filmmakers,
Mhm.
if it's like a Korean or Asian film,
Okay.
where almost like reminiscent of Aliens, where it was the same planet, but it was covered up by the corporation.
Oh, interesting. So it's like the Thing's kind of homeworld or something? Or?
So imagine, no, well, imagine it's still in a different, like Antarctica, but that whole area was bought out by a corporation for research, and the scientists
Gotcha.
don't know what was there before because technically the spaceship is still there. The spaceship never left and it's still in that area. So, I think it could open up a little bit more. But the fact that I do think like if it was done like almost on an international scale, they would use more practical effects over CGI.
Mhm.
And I just think if they do it that way, where now you have a corporation that takes over, and now it's corporate greed and their willingness to go in there and find this thing,
Right.
hire a team to find it, where they're looking to possibly. I mean, think about it. You have a corporations that they're trying to find their next big money maker. So imagine they find out that this thing could imitate people. Now you're talking about them thinking about immortality and shit like that. So you could
Right.
really open the shit
You
up.
could run with it. You could run with
Yeah.
it.
So I think if they do that, I mean, I would, as long as they stick with practical effects over CGI. Now, yes, unfortunately, there will be some scenes where you're going to need some CGI. I understand that,
We
but
get it.
put as much practical effects in as possible, because
Right.
if the 2011 film had more practical effects, it would be mentioned more.
I believe that if it was even if it was a 50-50 split, I feel like there would be a lot more goodwill towards it.
Oh, yes.
But if it was like I feel like if it was an 80-20, 80 practical, 20 CGI, I feel like people would have very high praise for it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not. Now, you mentioned something about studio issues. I mean, what other issues did they have when they were making this film?
I don't know off the top of my head, like if there were other ones. Do you know?
No, not. I mean, this film when it was made, it was almost like quiet. To be honest, they
Yeah,
were like, "We're not going to talk about. We're just going to make the film." And I haven't seen that feature. I definitely, I want to take a look at that because I love, checking out things like behind the scenes. But definitely got to check that out. Where's that featurette thing at?
I cannot remember off the top of my head because I think I mean, I saw it maybe 8 or 9 years ago, so I couldn't place it. But yeah, and I've only seen it like twice. But in that whole thing, I think the directors have come out and said like we wanted to do more practical. And again, I don't know how much, but that is, and it's really just like, I don't know how much the studios interfered, but it would really suck if the only thing they interfered on was that like practical and CGI element, because it was the one like Achilles heel type deal that this would have killed everything, and they did it, you know?
No, yeah, because I mean, don't get me wrong. It's for me. I don't like I said. I don't think it's a bad film. I think it's actually a good film. Because it has a good cast, and like I said, Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Her character's so good, but everybody else played their role. I mean, even though there were some characters that remind me too much of 1982 film, but
Mhm.
it had the foundation was there for a great film. And it's unfortunate that once again studios, you know, oh, we'll do this for CGI, instead of doing the labor of doing the practical effects. But I like the film in certain aspects of it because I wanted to know more, how they discovered the spaceship. And I mean, granted, the way they discovered it was a little bit too over the top in a way for me,
Right.
but I and the fact that they built that tunnel really quick to get to the spaceship,
Really
which
quickly.
which and
Mhm.
that's I wish there was more of a time frame of because it took place the same time as technically the original
Right.
because the transition was there,
Yeah. I
but
mean,
from
just
yeah, it was in a different part. Now, but see, that's where they could do another one, in a different location, which it's almost like you go around the whole Antarctica because maybe there's more than one spaceship. But
ooh,
it's for me, it's like everything was there for good prequel, and I just wish they would have taken that advice of more practical effects. Fuck it. If you're gonna do another one now, get Damien Leone. I mean, he does his own practical effects for Terrifier, and the guy's a freaking. I'm sure he could pull off a thing.
he goes ham on those
Yeah,
practical effects.
he does. But it'd be interesting to see how he would do the practical effects for this. But yeah, for me, I mean, I do think that I'm open to a possible sequel. I think it would be interesting on who would do the sequel and what director they would ask to do it. Who would write? I mean, if you do if you do a thing with Fede Alvarez,
Hey, there you go.
I mean, he did good with Alien Romulus.
He did pretty good.
So I mean, for him to take Alien Romulus and make it what he did, and everybody liked Alien Romulus. I don't think anybody had much knock on the film. Everybody enjoyed
Right.
Alien Romulus. So if you have somebody who could probably step in and take a classic like this and build more on it, I would definitely trust Fede Alvarez to do it because like he's really good at this, and he loves science fiction. But yeah, I mean, overall, these two franchises, I mean, these two films, I mean, I definitely will watch both of them. I mean, I'm not gonna watch the original countless times.
Right.
2011, I'll watch. I don't. That's not one of the films. I mean, I don't want to see this shit. If it's there, if I got to do that, let me watch it. And now, when you go to watch it again, like, all right, how could I? How would we rebuild this movie?
Right.
So
How will we
that's
make it better? And there really with the 2011 one, there truly isn't too much like when in terms of like acting or like plot
yeah.
elements and like story, there's not too much to improve on, like a crazy amount.
No, because everything was already there. You knew there were Norwegian researchers. You knew everything was already set for them, and all they had
Right.
to do was just build on it. I mean, they don't get me wrong. They took certain details, like the campsite looked the same, the encasement for the alien, you know, looked about the same. Even though I think it looked a little bigger in the 2011
Yeah, definitely
than it did.
bigger.
But those are little things. I mean, overall, I do think it's a decent prequel to a classic, and yeah, I mean, let's see if they do a sequel to it.
Let's
Fede
see.
Alvarez, come on, do it. I think he's doing another. Is he doing another Alien?
I would be shocked if he wasn't doing another Alien. So
Listen, that's his franchise now. He could ride that shit now because what he did in Romulus was
yeah,
freaking amazing. It's sad because I wish they would have did the same thing with, like, I like Prometheus, and I don't think Covenant was a good follow up to it,
no,
and
no,
that's sad because I was really pissed off with Alien Covenant. because of Prometheus. I think is a very underrated alien film, and I love that film so much. But yeah, I mean, overall, going back to the thing, yeah, I mean, I'm glad we talked about this. I mean, this film is still a classic. If you haven't watched the 2011 film, even though we sound like we bashed the crap out of it, watch it. Let us know what you think of it. It's not a bad prequel to this classic.
No.
Everything was there for them to make the film, and they just worked with what they got. Unfortunately, once again, studio interferes. They want to make it then. Let's make it look good. CGI. CGI is not always going to be the one to help you in certain aspects. I mean, if you want to watch a good film that is almost the thing like as far as practical effects use, go watch Super Deep. It's currently streaming on Shudder. It's a film that I might revisit either on this show or a different show, but definitely look into that one as far as practical effects go because they kind of played homage to the thing, what they did for their creature. But yeah, Radar, thank you for joining me for this one. And this is one of these franchises we could keep talking about it, but
Yeah, we
so
could.
many people talked about the thing, and we don't want to just water down everything people said. So, and the fact that we during the 2011 to see what you think about the 2011 film because that's what we're more interested about. What did you think of the 2011 film, and was it a worthy prequel, or would you just ignore it completely and wish it never happened? Fortunately, you can't do that with films, but if you could,
You
what would
know,
you do? What is your decision on the 2011 prequel? Let us know because I am interested. I'm sure Radar is interested. So until next time, thank you once again, Radar, for joining me on this edition
of
of
course.
Beyond Our World. Got a lot more coming your way. He's going to show up again. I think which one are you doing? Are you doing the blob? Yeah, you're doing the blob.
Oh yeah, I guess I am.
The
There you go.
1980s
Start
one.
doing the
Yeah,
blob.
1980s one, which we're going to talk about that one. Different type of alien, but one a little bit more fucked up, I think. Till next time, this is JR. Like, subscribe, share, and more coming your way. Continue watching Horror Fiend TV because we are looking to grow and we have a lot more different shows coming. Even me and this guy have a couple we're cooking on. So, till next time, peace.